Do you want to learn how one of the greatest thinkers in Silicon Valley says you can get rich without getting lucky? Do you want to know why ultimately that wealth is not what you wanted anyways? Then let's get started. This is a review and lessons learned from the book, The Almanack of Naval Ravikant. Naval is one of my favorite thinkers. He is an entrepreneur, philosopher, and investor, best known for co-founding AngelList, a prolific early stage investor. He has backed companies like Twitter, Uber, Stack Overflow, and many more. Beyond his entrepreneurial pursuits, Naval is admired for his insights and reflection on wealth, happiness, and personal growth, shared through his popular podcast appearances, social media, and writings. He is a hero of mine that I admire and study often in my own pursuit of mastery. As always, detailed notes and transcripts are available in the show notes and on slashdev.io. So let's dive into the first part of the book. So Naval covers 2 out of 3 areas here: wealth, health, and happiness. He leaves the health area for other experts who know more than him. Really, this book touches on wealth and happiness. So he starts out with wealth. And let's dive into understanding how wealth is created. Making money is not a thing you do. It's a skill you learn. Getting rich is about knowing what to do, who to do it with, and when to do it. Understand ethical wealth creation is possible. If you secretly despise wealth, it will elude you. You're not going to get rich renting out your time. You must own equity, a piece of the business. You will get rich by giving society what it wants, but does not yet know how to get at scale. Pick an industry where you can play long-term games with long-term people. We're going to hear that again and again. Play iterated games. All the returns in life, whether in wealth, relationships, or knowledge, come from compound interest. Pick business partners with high intelligence, energy, and above all, integrity. Don't partner with cynics and pessimists. Their beliefs are self-fulfilling. Learn to sell, learn to build. If you can do both, you will be unstoppable. Now, the section on specific knowledge. Arm yourself with specific knowledge, accountability, and leverage. Specific knowledge is knowledge you cannot be trained for. If society can train you, it can train someone else and replace you. Specific knowledge is found by pursuing your genuine curiosity and passion rather than whatever is hot now. Building specific knowledge will feel like play to you, but will look like work to others. When specific knowledge is taught, it's through apprenticeships, not schools. Specific knowledge is often highly technical or creative. It cannot be outsourced or automated. So this is a great parallel to Paul Graham's essay, How to Do Great Work, where he talks about following your curiosity and doing things that are excitingly ambitious. He talks about going to the center of innovation in your field, which is a way to make sure you find the right people to play long-term games with. You need to surround yourself with the right types of people. These are the people through mentorship, through following your genuine curiosity, are going to help you to build that specific knowledge that Naval is talking about here. This specific knowledge is critical to building wealth. Now, the concept of leverage. Embrace accountability and take business risks under your own name. Society will reward you with responsibility, equity, and leverage. Fortunes require leverage. Business leverage comes from capital, people, and products with no marginal cost of replication. Code and media. Capital means money. To raise money, apply your specific knowledge with accountability and show resulting good judgment. Labor means people working for you. It's the oldest and most fought after form of leverage. Labor, leverage will impress your parents, but don't waste your life chasing it. Capital and labor are permissioned leverage. Everyone is chasing capital, but someone has to give it to you. Everyone is trying to lead, but someone has to follow you. Code and media are permissionless leverage. They're the leverage behind the newly rich. You can create software media that works for you while you sleep. If you can't code, write books and blogs, record videos and podcasts. Leverage is a force multiplier for your judgment. So again and again, we learn about the concept of leverage and the power of exponential curves, whether it's Paul Graham, Naval, or other tech entrepreneurs. Leverage helps you build a career on the foundation of an exponential curve. It allows you to add a force multiplier to the work you're doing. If all you ever do is work for an hourly wage, you will never gain the force multiplier of leverage. You must identify forms of leverage that align with your work and deploy them so you can create outsized returns. I think about this more and more as an entrepreneur, where in the early days of building Slashdev, we had very little value beyond what we could grind out to bring in terms of business. These days, through investing in the leverage of media and our website, we've created an engine for traffic that leads to continued sustained business. And it really took this for me to understand this. It's a simple example, but when you start out with a website, no one is coming to it. And as you build your keywords, your articles, as you produce that media, that is a form of leverage, you create something that works for you while you sleep. This is a simple example. There's other examples Naval talks about here, but it's critical that if you want to build wealth, you need to find and build leverage. Set and enforce an aspirational personal hourly rate. If fixing a problem will save less than your hourly rate, ignore it. If outsourcing a task will cost less than your hourly rate, outsource it. Work as hard as you can, even though who you work with and what you work on are more important than how hard you work. Become the best in the world at what you do. Keep redefining what you do until this is true. I could certainly benefit from reflecting on this more myself. Identifying what you're truly gifted at is one of the great joys of life and something that continues to evolve as you move through your career. I think finding those areas that you enjoy the practice when other people think it's boring, that's really a great sign that you're moving towards your gift and you're working on something that you can build specific knowledge and you can build leverage on. So, keep working as hard as you can, but it's more important to work with the right people. It's more important what you work on. And then remember, you can be the best in the world at what you do. You just have to keep redefining what that is. Apply specific knowledge with leverage, and eventually you will get what you desire. Your summary says, productize yourself. What does that mean? Productize and yourself. Yourself has uniqueness. Productize has leverage. Yourself has accountability. Productize has specific knowledge. Yourself also has specific knowledge in there. So all of these pieces, you can combine them into these two words. This is kind of summarizing this whole concept of creating wealth. Leverage, specific knowledge, accountability, productize yourself, redefining what you do until you're the best in the world at it. I think this is a great framing of this section of the book. Productize yourself. What would you incorporated look like as a product? How would you function best in the market? What value do you provide that you're uniquely gifted at? This is what you at scale can provide to the world. Technology democratizes consumption, but consolidates production. The best person in the world at anything gets to do it for everyone. The internet has massively broadened the possible space of careers. Most people haven't figured this out yet. This is a really important concept. You might read this as I can do anything, but you should be careful as there's an exponential curve here. There's a power law here. Yes, you can do anything, but the best of the best will get the exponential side of the curve. So really, you need to work harder than ever to figure out what it is you can be the best in the world at. Find and build specific knowledge. No one can compete with you on being you. Most of life is a search for who and what needs you the most. This is just more support for the concept of productizing yourself. Nobody else can compete at being you. Figure out what you're a nerd about. Figure out what you want to sit there late at night doing, the work that others find boring, that you love to do, the studying, the details, the boring part for others, that's fun for you. It's a great sign that you're on the right track. Find a position of leverage. If it entertains you now, but will bore you someday, it's a distraction. Keep looking. I love this quote. It's basically saying the fundamental truth that you need to be ready to stick with things for the long run. Overnight successes and get rich schemes don't exist, or at least they don't exist to the degree that your mind, as well as others, consider they do. But when in anything significant that will actually bring you fulfillment, then you need to be willing to master that which you are working on. You need to be willing to work at it for years and to get to the frontiers of knowledge and push the craft forward. So again, if it entertains you now, but will bore you someday, the distraction, keep looking. What are you willing to stick with for years? What are you willing to stick with, even if you never succeed? Because it's worth doing. The art is worth doing for the art's sake. 40-hour work weeks are a relic of the industrial age. Knowledge workers function like athletes. Train and sprint, then rest and reassess. If you want to be part of a great tech company, then you need to be able to sell or build. If you don't do either, learn. Earn with your mind, not your time. If you're going to live in a city for 10 years, if you're going to be in a job for 5 years, if you're in a relationship for a decade, you should be spending 1 to 2 years deciding those things. These are highly dominating decisions. Those 3 decisions really matter. Value your time at an hourly rate and ruthlessly spend to save time at that rate. You will never be worth more than you think you're worth. I could probably benefit from reflecting on this more. Let's say today I'm building a business that could be worth $1 million USD. Then let's say my time is worth around $1,000 an hour. I should not be working for less than that. The time that I spend should be on building the systems that can run without me and in doing the work that I am specifically gifted for. It would probably benefit me a lot to ask, what am I doing that could be automated or could be improved with a new team member? What part of my workday is not at that $1,000 an hour pay rate? Find work that feels like play. What is your definition of retirement? Retirement is when you stop sacrificing today for an imaginary tomorrow. When today is complete in and of itself, you're retired. How do you get there? Well, one way is to have so much money saved that your passive income without you lifting a finger covers your burn rate. A second is you just drive your burn rate down to zero. You become a monk. Yeah, this is like the Dave Ramsey method. It's just cut the expenses. It's the first thing you should look at. A third is you're doing something you love. You enjoy it so much, it's not about the money. So there are multiple ways to retirement. Whether in commerce, science, or politics, history remembers the artists. Art is creativity. Art is anything done for its own sake. Quote from Naval, obviously that was in my mind because I said it before I came up here. This is exactly how I feel about creating content and growing a business. It's why I love to just work on this. It's not about like the marginal utility. It's just what I love to do and where I love to focus my time. I value freedom above everything else, all kinds of freedom. Freedom to do what I want, freedom from things I don't want to do, freedom from my own emotions or things that may disturb my peace. For me, freedom is my number one value. The winners of any game are the people who are so addicted, they continue playing even if the marginal utility from winning declines. What is he really saying here? He's saying that originally you make a killing doing this, but as you go on and on, you make less and less. Instead of 10K per day, you only make 2K per day in additional time spent. This does not impact your drive since you're doing it for the sake of doing it, not for the return. This also reminds me a bit of Paul Graham talking about how the early days of an exponential curve feel like a boring, flat curve, but in reality, they are the building blocks of a beautiful exponential curve. If you're doing something that has leverage, that has compounding, in the early days, it's going to feel like nothing. But as you continue to push forward, even those early days are still the building blocks of that exponential curve. They're just as important as the 300th building block that sees massive growth. So keep building that exponential curve. How to get lucky. I think business networking is a complete waste of time. Be a maker who makes something interesting people want. Show your craft, practice your craft, and the right people will eventually find you. Ways to get lucky. Hope luck finds you. Hustle until you stumble into it. Prepare the mind and be sensitive to chances others miss. Become the best at what you do. Refine what you do until this is true. Opportunity will seek you out. Luck becomes your destiny. I like that this goes against conventional wisdom of networking. No, not wasting your time doing that. Just build something great and your network will find you. Be patient. One thing I figured out later in life is generally, at least in the tech business in Silicon Valley, great people have great outcomes. You just have to be patient. Every person I met at the beginning of my career 20 years ago, where I looked at them and I said, wow, that guy or gal is super capable, so smart and dedicated. All of them, almost without exception, became extremely successful. You just had to give them a long enough time scale. It never happens in the time scale you want or they want, but it does happen. Again, it never happens in the timeline you want. You should learn this from a young age. It'll help you to be a lot happier in life. Reminds me of what Jensen Huang, the founder of NVIDIA, says. People with high expectations are usually very unhappy because in life, you will meet failure. It will take you much longer than you want to reach your goals. People with really high expectations don't handle these setbacks well. They break. It is those that can keep moving forward that realize their grand visions. Everybody wants to get rich immediately, but the world is an efficient place. Immediate doesn't work. You do have to put in the time. You do have to put in the hours. And so I think you have to put yourself in the position with a specific knowledge, with accountability, with leverage, with the authentic skill set you have to be the best in the world at what you do. You have to enjoy it and keep doing it, keep doing it, and keep doing it. Don't keep track and don't keep count, because if you do, you will run out of time. What making money will do is solve your money problems. It will remove a set of things that could get in the way of being happy, but it is not going to make you happy. I know many very wealthy people who are unhappy. Most of the time, the person you have to become to make money is a high anxiety, high stress, hardworking, competitive person. When you have done that for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and you suddenly make money, you can't turn it off. You've trained yourself to be a high anxiety person. Then you have to learn how to be happy. This is really interesting. It reminds me of John Rockefeller. And, in his later years, he lost all of his hair, was riddled by stress, and basically said that all the work he had done, all the money he had made, it was not worth it for the amount of stress he had been put through. Whereas on the other side of that coin, you have someone like Andrew Carnegie, who after he made his first billions, committed himself to only working 2 hours per day, so that he had to be a really good manager. He had to give a lot of responsibility to really key people, but he preserved his happiness and his joy of life. So, you can live life in many different ways, but the default of success leads many people into high stress, high anxiety outcomes, not necessarily happiness. Judgment. If you want to make the maximum amount of money possible, if you want to get rich over your life in a deterministically predictable way, stay on the bleeding edge of trends and study technology, design, and art. Become really good at something. Hard work is really overrated. How hard you work matters a lot less in the modern economy. What is underrated? Judgment. Judgment is underrated. Can you define judgment? My definition of this is knowing the long-term consequences of your actions. Wisdom. Wisdom applied to external problems is judgment. They're highly linked. Knowing the long-term consequences of your actions and then making the right decision, capitalize on that. In an age of leverage, one correct decision can win everything. Without hard work, you'll develop neither judgment nor leverage. You have to put in the time, but the judgment is more important. The direction you're heading in matters more than how fast you move, especially with leverage. Picking the direction you're heading in for every decision is far, far more important than how much force you apply. Just pick the right direction to start walking in and start walking. The importance of direction over speed. Naval emphasizes that in an age of massive leverage, where technology, capital, and media can amplify your decisions, picking the right direction to move is more critical than simply moving fast. If you have leverage, but point in the wrong direction, you're just accelerating to the path towards a suboptimal outcome. Good judgment helps ensure you're aiming at a worthwhile target. How to develop good judgment? Naval repeatedly underscores that reading, thinking, and learning from mistakes are the primary ways to refine judgment. Reading, thinking, and learning from mistakes are the primary ways to refine judgment. He urges people to read widely, philosophy, science, economics, history, and think deeply about what they're reading so that over the years, decades, you develop a high caliber gut that discerns what's important and what's not, a gut instinct that can tell. Build your mental models, as Charlie Munger says. Charlie Munger is famous for his idea of a lattice work of mental models. Essentially, if you develop good judgment by understanding fundamental principles from multiple disciplines, psychology, biology, mathematics, engineering, and then apply them to real-world scenarios, Munger's brand of worldly wisdom aligns well with Naval's emphasis on reading widely. Confucius places emphasis on performing daily rituals and social interactions with respect and mindfulness to develop wisdom. You cultivate a sense of harmony and moral awareness doing this. Naval talks a lot about studying and emulating role models, learning from those who exemplify virtue, teachers, elders, and historical figures. Confucius himself said, by 3 methods, we may learn wisdom. First, by reflection. Second, by imitation. And third, by experience. And then, of course, we have Nassim Taleb. You need to have skin in the game in order for you to gain true wisdom or mastery. Any career or occupation where you don't have direct skin in the game will not give you the adversity you need to really refine your skill against reality. Can't recommend Skin in the Game enough, or any of the books by Nassim Taleb. How to think clearly. Clear thinker is a better compliment than smart. Real knowledge is intrinsic, and it's built from the ground up. To use a math example, you can't understand trigonometry without understanding arithmetic and geometry. Basically, if someone is using a lot of fancy words and a lot of big concepts, they probably don't know what they're talking about. I think the smartest people can explain things to a child. If you can't explain it to a child, then you don't know it. It's a common saying, and it's very true. The more desire I have for something to work out in a certain way, the less likely I am to see the truth, especially in business. If something isn't going well, I try to acknowledge it publicly. And I try to acknowledge it publicly in front of my coworkers and friends. Then I'm not hiding it from anybody else. If I'm not hiding it from anybody, I'm not going to delude myself on what's actually going on. It's actually really important to have empty space. If you don't have a day or two every week in your calendar where you're not always in meetings and you're not always busy, then you're not going to be able to think. It's only after you're bored you have the greatest ideas. It's never going to be when you're stressed or busy, running around or rushed. Make the time. I need to be more disciplined about this personally. I notice how powerful it is when I really give myself the time and mental space to think. I start to realize the big bottlenecks in my business or what I need to be focusing on in life or areas of my health or mindset that need more attention. So, especially in a world where success means hard work, high anxiety, high stress, this is really hard for most people who found the formula for some success. It kind of goes against those foundations to actually have days of nothingness. So you can really let your mind process the bigger questions and really think through the big ideas and the big breakthroughs. Very smart people tend to be weird since they insist on thinking everything through for themselves. Shed your identity to see reality. Facebook redesigns, Twitter redesigns, personalities, careers, and teams also need redesigns. There are no permanent solutions in the dynamic system. This is the fundamental truth of evolution. We must evolve to win in our ecosystem. We must be looking to rethink ourselves from the ground up, always. Learn the skills of decision making. It's really important for me to be honest. I don't go out of my way volunteering negativity or nasty things. I would combine radical honesty with an old rule Warren Buffett has, which is praise specifically, criticize generally. I try to follow this. I don't always follow it, but I think I follow it enough to have made a difference in my life. Decision making is everything. In fact, someone who makes decisions right 80% of the time instead of 70% of the time will be valued and compensated in the market hundreds of times more. Again, here, Naval talks about the power of judgment. This is a super important concept, something to really think about. Jeff Bezos has a great saying: you should be careful about one-way door decisions and very fast to make revolving door decisions. Slow down to make the decisions that are hard or impossible to go back on, and really quick with decisions you can easily change. The more you know, the less you diversify. Collect mental models. The best mental models I've found came through evolution, game theory, and Charlie Munger. Inversion, I don't believe I have the ability to say what is going to work. Rather, I try to eliminate what's not going to work. I think being successful is just about not making mistakes. It's not about having correct judgment. It's about avoiding incorrect judgments. Complexity theory. I was really into complexity theory back in the mid-90s. The more I got into it, the more I understand the limits of knowledge and the limits of our prediction capability. Complexity has been super helpful to me. It has helped me to come to a system that operates in the face of ignorance. I believe we are fundamentally ignorant and very, very bad at predicting the future. Julius Caesar famously said, if you want it done, then go. And if not, then send. What he meant was, if you want it done right, then you have to go yourself and do it. When you are the principal, then you are the owner. You care, and you will do a great job. When you're the agent and you are doing it on somebody else's behalf, you can do a bad job. You just don't care. You optimize for yourself rather than for the principal's assets. The more closely you can tie someone's compensation to the exact value they're creating, the more you turn them into a principal and the less you turn them into an agent. Classic principal agent here. So this is a really important concept. Reading, science, math, and philosophy 1 hour per day will likely put you in the upper echelon of human success within 7 years. Learn to love to read. The genuine love for reading itself, when cultivated, is a superpower. We live in the age of Alexandria, when every book and every piece of knowledge ever written down is a fingertip away. The means of learning are abundant. It is the desire to learn that is scarce. These days, I find myself rereading as much or more as I do reading. I don't want to read everything. I just want to read the 100 greatest books over and over again. I think there's a lot to that idea. It's really more about identifying the great books for you, because different books speak to different people. Then you can really absorb those. Reading a book isn't a race. The better the book, the more slowly it should be absorbed. It's not about educated versus uneducated. It's about likes to read and doesn't like to read. What can I do for the next 60 days to become a clearer, more independent thinker? Read the greats in math, science, and philosophy. Ignore your contemporaries and news. Avoid tribal identification. Put truth above social approval. No book in the library should scare you, whether it's math, physics, electrical engineering, sociology, or an economics book. You should be able to take any book down off the shelf and read it. A number of them are going to be too difficult for you. That's okay. Read them anyways, then go back and reread them and reread them. I really love this concept, and I feel I should be pushing myself even more to dive into more and more technical subjects. I mean, I remember a time when I thought programming was maybe more advanced than I was capable of. And I think this is a common thing, a common occurrence with human nature that, if you have, which we all have a little bit of this fixed mindset, you might think, oh, am I really smart enough to figure this out? Can I do this? But it's not about that fixed intelligence as long as you're at a base level of intelligence. It's about the curiosity you have and the desire to keep going at it and keep learning. The best way to have a high quality foundation, you may not love this answer, but the trick is to stick to science and stick to the basics. Generally, there are only a few things you can read people don't disagree with. Very few people disagree with 2 + 2 = 4, right? That's serious knowledge. Mathematics is a solid foundation. You know that song that you can't get out of your head? All thoughts work that way. Careful what you read. A calm mind, a fit body, and a house full of love. Those things cannot be bought. They must be earned. Now we will begin part 2 on happiness. The 3 big ones in life are wealth, health, and happiness. We pursue them in that order, but their importance is in reverse. Maybe happiness is not something you inherit or even choose, but a highly personal skill that can be learned, like fitness or nutrition. Happiness is a very evolving thing, I think, like all the great questions. When you're a little kid, you go to your mom and ask, what happens when we die? Is there a Santa Claus? Is there a God? Should I be happy? Who should I marry? These kinds of things. These are no glib answers because no answers apply to everybody. These kinds of questions ultimately do have answers, but they have personal answers. The answers that work for me are not going to be the ones that make sense for you and vice versa. Whatever happiness means to me, it means something different to you. I think it's very important to explore what these definitions are. For some people I know, it's a flow state. For some people, it's satisfaction. For some people, it's a feeling of contentment. My definition keeps evolving. The answer I would have given you a year ago will be different than what I tell you now. Today, I believe happiness is really a default state. Happiness is there when you remove the sense of something missing in your life. We are highly judgmental survival and replication machines. We constantly walk around thinking, I need this or I need that, trapped in the web of desires. Happiness is the state when nothing is missing. When nothing is missing, your mind shuts down and stops running into the past or future to regret something or to plan something. To me, happiness is not about positive thoughts. It's not about negative thoughts. It's about the absence of desire, especially absence of desire for external things. The fewer desires I can have, the more I can accept the current state of things, the less my mind is moving, because the mind really exists in motion towards the future or the past. The more present I am, the happier and the more content I will be. If I latch onto a feeling, if I say, oh, I'm happy now, and I want to stay happy, then I'm going to drop out of that happiness. Now suddenly the mind is moving. It's trying to attach to something. It's trying to create a permanent situation out of a temporary situation. The world just reflects your own feelings back at you. Reality is neutral. Reality has no judgments. To a tree, there's no concept of right or wrong, good or bad. You're born, you have a whole set of sensory experiences and stimulations, lights, colors, and sounds, and then you die. How you choose to interpret them is up to you. You have that choice. This is what I mean when I say happiness is a choice. If you believe it's a choice, you can start working on it. I've also come to believe in the complete and utter insignificance of the self. I think that helps a lot. For example, if you thought you were the most important thing in the universe, then you would have to bend the entire universe to your will. If you're the most important thing in the universe, then how could it not conform to your desires? If it doesn't conform to your desires, something is wrong. However, if you view yourself as a bacteria or an amoeba, if you view all of your works as writing on water or building castles in the sand, then you have no expectation for how life should actually be. Life is just the way it is. When you accept that, you have no cause to be happy or unhappy. Those things almost don't apply. Don't take yourself so seriously. You're just a monkey with a plan. These concepts remind me of Jensen talking about people with high expectations are not very happy. They can't deal with failure. I just love how, Naval is talking about, you're just a monkey with a plan. Don't take yourself so seriously. Don't build it up to be more than it is. We're just dust in the wind, It's really, that's how you're going to find the most happiness. And it's like this balance between this ambition and desire to do something and to pursue your career and your art form. But it's also this detachment from the outcomes and lack of expectations in terms of what you expect from the work. We think of ourselves as fixed and the world as malleable, but it's really we who are malleable and the world is largely fixed. I have lowered my identity. I have lowered the chattering of my mind. I don't care about things that don't really matter. I don't get involved in politics. I don't hang around unhappy people. I really value my time on this earth. I read philosophy, I meditate, I hang out with happy people, and it works. Happiness, love, and passion aren't things you find, they're choices you make. Happiness is a choice you make and a skill you develop. We crave experiences that will make us be present, but the cravings themselves takes us from the present moment. I just don't believe in anything from my past. Anything. No memories, no regrets, no people, no trips, nothing. A lot of our unhappiness comes from comparing things to the past or the present. There's a great definition I read. Enlightenment is the space between your thoughts. It means enlightenment isn't something you achieve after 30 years sitting on a mountaintop. It's something you can achieve moment to moment, and you can be enlightened to a certain percent every single day. This reminds me a bit of the book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. He just sat on a park bench for years, just being to find the power of now and just being in the present moment, not listening to the chatter of the mind. What if this life is the paradise we were promised and we're just squandering it? This reminds me of the quote, the kingdom of heaven is here. And it's really about, we form our own reality. We can make our life heaven or we can make our life hell. It's really how we master our life and interpret the events in our life that determine this. I think a lot of us have this low level, pervasive feeling of anxiety. If you pay attention to your mind, sometimes you're just running around doing your thing and you're not feeling great. And you notice your mind is chattering and chattering about something. Maybe you can't sit still. There's this nexting thing where you're sitting in one spot thinking about where you should be next. It's always the next thing, then the next thing, then the next thing after that, then the next thing after that, creating this pervasive anxiety. It's most obvious if you ever just sit down and try to do nothing. Nothing. I mean nothing. I mean not read a book. I mean not listen to music. I mean literally just sit down and do nothing. You can't do it because there's anxiety always trying to make you get up and go, get up and go, get up and go. I think it's important to just be aware the anxiety is making you unhappy. The anxiety is just a series of running thoughts. Every desire is a chosen unhappiness. I think the most common mistake for humanity is believing you're going to be made happy because of some external circumstance. I know that's not original. That's not new. It's fundamental Buddhist wisdom. I'm not taking credit for it. I think I really just recognize it on a fundamental level, including in myself. The fundamental delusion. There is something out there that will make me happy and fulfill me forever. One thing I've learned recently, it's way more important to perfect your desires than to try to do something you don't 100% desire. By the time people realize they have enough money, they've lost their time and their health. Success does not earn happiness. The trick is knowing when to jump off and play instead. To me, the real winners are the ones who step out of the game entirely, who don't even play the game, who rise above it. Those are the people who have such internal mental and self-control and self-awareness. They need nothing from anybody else. I can definitely relate to this, and I can see how it's easy to be stuck in the rat race. How you just want to do more. You want to reach that next goal. You want to reach that next target, and you don't jump off and play. Do something fun. What excites you? What lights you up? What did you love as a child, as a young person that you should do more of? There's a line from Blaise Pascal I read. Basically, it says, all of a man's troubles arise because he cannot sit in a room quietly by himself. If you could just sit for 30 minutes and be happy, you are successful. That is a very powerful place to be. But very few of us get there. In reality, peace is not a guarantee. It's always flowing. It's always changing. You want to learn the core skill of flowing with life and accepting it in most cases. Envy is the enemy of happiness. I don't think that life is hard. I think we make it hard. One of the things I'm trying to get rid of is the word should. Whenever the word should creeps up in your mind, it's guilt or social program. Doing something because you should basically means you don't actually want to do it. It's just making you miserable. So I'm trying to eliminate as many shoulds from my life as possible. The enemy of peace of mind is expectations drilled into you by society and other people. Happiness is built by habits. If you can't see yourself working with someone for life, don't work with them for a day. No exceptions. All screen activities are linked to less happiness. All non-screen activities linked to more happiness. A personal metric. How much of the day is spent doing things out of obligation rather than out of interest? Love that. What are you spending your time on based on interest versus obligation? It's a very important metric of the quality of your life. It concludes my favorite lessons and thoughts from reading the Almanack of Naval Ravikant. This is one of my all-time favorite thinkers, someone I go back to again and again. I hope that this gave you at least some inspiration or a new way of thinking that will allow you to continue in your pursuit of mastery. Cheers, and let's get back to building.